This Shabbos we begin a new Sefer, a new book of the Torah, Webdvar Devarim. It begins with, of course, Parsha's Devarim. Parsha's Devarim is always read on the Shabbos before Tisha Baav. This year, it's actually read on Tisha Baav itself, because we commemorate Tisha Baav on Sunday, since we can't fast on Tisha Baav. But what is it about Parsha's Devarim that associates it with Tisha Baav, that every year we read it on the Shabbos before Tisha Baav? There are a number of suggestions out there, and I would like to focus on a suggestion that can be gleaned from a comment that Rashi makes in the very beginning of the Parsha. We know that the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Most prominently, as one of the factors, was the idea of sinas chinam, baseless hatred. The people didn't know how to treat each other. People didn't know how to behave appropriately. And the Gemara tells us that in every generation in which the Beis HaMikdash is not rebuilt, that we are responsible, that generation is responsible, as if that generation burnt the Beis HaMikdash, destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. So what is it that we can learn from Parsha's Devarim that could help us commemorate Tisha B'Av and put us in the proper frame of mind? Moshe Rabbeinu is standing at the end of his life. He is giving his final address to all of the Jewish people. He's telling them all about their history, and he's telling them about the difficult journey that he has had, bringing them to this point. They, of course, will go over and enter the land of Israel. They will be rewarded by finally being able to make it to the place that God had promised them for so many years that they yearned for. He, however, will die on the other side of the Jordan River. Moshe will not make it over to the land of Israel. And Moshe speaks to the Jewish people about all of the trials and tribulations, the difficult moments that they had when they were in the Midbar. We spoke about this a little bit last week, and we spoke about the different journeys the Jewish people had. We spoke about the locations where the Jewish people traveled. And again, Moshe in the beginning of our Parsha seems to identify other locations. As the Pasuk says, Bein Paran, Ubein Tofel, V'Lavan, V'Chatzeros, V'Di Zahav, all of these different locations that Moshe describes the Jewish people had issues, had problems that he had to deal with. Now, Rashi comments as follows. Rashi says, I've looked everywhere, everything that was accessible to Rashi, and he says, I have not found any place that has been called by these names. What's going on here? What is Moshe talking about? We haven't found any locations on the map which fit the descriptions that is written in this week's Parsha. So what is it that the Torah is really referring to? So Rashi explains that Moshe alluded to the places where the Jewish people sinned to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to God. He didn't want to embarrass the people directly, so he alluded to the place which gave them the opportunity to do some self-introspection and conclude about what Moshe was alluding to so that they can learn a lesson from it. And this is a tremendous lesson for us when it comes to our interpersonal relationships and being able to deal with people when at times people may have done something to hurt us or to harm us. How do we approach a person, rebuke a person, reproach a person for something that they may have done to harm us or someone else? We take a lesson from Moshe Rabbeinu. We're not brazen enough to say to their face, this is what you did, and you should never have done this. But instead we try to allude to it and try to have people recognize and understand their mistakes by realizing it themselves so that they can then be remorseful and repent for what they did. Now, this doesn't always work. People aren't always that understanding of their own self and that aware of what they did, and sometimes, unfortunately, we do have to be a little bit straight with them and tell them, look, this is what you did that hurt me or hurt someone else. But at the very outset, we should at least try to be very careful when speaking to someone else and giving them some kind of reproach, because immediately, naturally, they're going to be defensive. But if we try to share with them in somewhat of a careful and a very calm and peaceful manner that they may have done something which could have hurt someone, then maybe they will come to realize themselves that they won't be embarrassed, they won't be hurt, but the embarrassment will perhaps come from themselves instead of us embarrassing them, and they will be able to make up for what they did. I think it's a tremendous lesson that Moshe begins Sefer Devarim with, that he teaches the Jewish people, and that is why, one of the suggestions as to why Parshas Devarim is read right before Tisha B'Av. May we learn from this lesson that Moshe Rabbeinu taught the Jewish people at the end of his life and apply it to our own lives so that we can rebuild the Beis HaMikdash by treating our fellow Jews with the proper respect that they all deserve, that we all deserve, even when we don't act in the most perfect of fashions. Thank you for listening. Have a good Shabbos, and may we all have a safe and meaningful fast.